So friends, now we are going to start with the second session. Uh, you see, let me share my PPT first. You see, the general purpose of any educational program is to promote learning pertaining to knowledge, skills, and attitude amongst learners. When I say knowledge, knowledge means what does someone need to know in order to do a job? That is the theory part. Second one is the skill. That is what does someone need to be able to do. Skill is something which requires hand and head coordination. And thirdly, the attitude. That is what sort of approach does a person doing that job need to have. That is the attitude. So all the three components are very essential. And any program is nothing without learners. So as a teacher, if we do not understand our learners and their needs, very little learning will take place. Now the question is, who are our learners? Learners who join the technical education system particularly, they they have either 10 or 10 plus 2 qualification, and they bring with them acquired set of knowledge, skills, and attitude as a result of their formal or informal training, or you can say learning. And they leave the organization with a changed set of knowledge, skills, and attitude uh, brought about as a result of imparting appropriate experiences to them during the course of instruction. In case of polytechnic, it is 3 years, and in case of engineering college, it is 4 years. And you know that no two individuals are alike. Individuals interpret events in terms of their experiences, in terms of their intelligence, personality, learning style, thinking style, self-concept, gender, and many more variables, and thereby may perceive, interpret, and evaluate the same learning event in different ways. So it is very important for a teacher to know and understand the learners and their individual differences. Only then he or she will be able to provide relevant and appropriate learning experiences to the learners in order to produce desired learning. So this session is about understanding learner and their needs. Okay. Now the question is, how do I meet the needs of all learners when their needs and talents, as you see, vary so greatly? Why I say the needs vary so greatly? Because if you look at the literature, you will find that each student learns in ways that are different from his or her peers. And several research studies have also verified. These studies have demonstrated that students can identify their own learning style, and when exposed to a teaching style consonant with the ways they believe they learn, students score higher on test. Fact, knowledge, attitude, and efficiency than do those taught in a manner which is dissonant with their learning style. And it is also advantageous to teach and test students in their preferred modalities. Okay, so you see in the classroom there are there are slow learners, there are problem learners, there are learners who are culturally deprived, there are underachievers, they have got some impairment, some students are on right track, and some students are talented, gifted, some students have got special needs, some you see some students are at level 1. So you see diversity, you see, has become the norm among the students in the classroom of today, because education is intended to promote the development of caring and responsible, you see, persons who are prepared to meet the challenges of a complex and changing world. So diversity in on account of language, because in a classroom students enter with different you see linguistic background. Their family backgrounds are different, their culture backgrounds are different. There are some students who come from high socioeconomic status, some students are of average socioeconomic student, some students have got experiential background. So diversity has become the norm among the students. Now you see the students aptitudes are different, achievements level are different, their interests are also different, their needs are different, their motivation level or their engagement level is different. You see, motivation when you are inspiring the student, you see what acts as a reinforcer for one may not be for another. This is because of individual differences among students. Their ability level is different, their personality, age, gender, and they have got various you can say ways of learning. So to achieve the goal, it is necessary to acknowledge that individual, you see, learners may have different levels of you see aptitude, achievement, and so on. Okay, now you see if you look at the characteristics of today's learner, you will find majority of learners are tech savvy. They rely on search engine whenever they are you see confused with certain concept. They go to search engine, maybe the Google, and also because in Google you will find number of videos available, examples are given, illustrations are given. So they rely too much on search engine. They are interested in multimedia because at a time they can work on number of number of you see technology. They create internet content, they are visually literate, and they also want to interact face to face, and they want immediate feedback, not delayed feedback, and there is always pressure on them to succeed. There are experiential learner. Some learners learn best when they feel or they touch something or they do smell something. Some learner learn through trial and error. Some students indulge in multitasking, and many a times you will notice the students have got short attention span. So it means as a teacher you need to vary the stimulus which you are going to present in the class, so as to sustain the attention of the students in the classroom, because with one mode of delivery you cannot sustain the attention of your student. The students prefer teamwork, so more effort should be given on collaborative and cooperative instructional method. They are emotionally open, they want instant gratification. Wonderful, you have said very rightly, that must come, and they respond very quickly. So motivating and engaging students is a very challenge, because all of us discuss one particular issue. What can we do to motivate students to learn? You see, the question is very simple, but the answer is not straightforward. Why? Because the typical procedures that the teachers employ for motivating their students are very often indirect and subtle. And most students invest large amount of time and energy to gain entry to the college or university, and when they arrive excited, they arrive excited and ready to engage with their chosen courses. But sometimes along the way they are discouraged and lose interest and motivation to continue with their study. And this loss of engagement can be on account of internal condition, because of health, poor health, or you can say low confidence level, poor self-esteem, they are not able to manage time, or loneliness, or external condition like the course structure is not from simple to difficult or from known to unknown, or the student is not satisfied with the way the teacher teaches to them, or they get disappointing grades or any other number of distraction. So as teacher, acknowledge and emphasize their initial interest and motivation to learn, and then help them to maintain it through to completion of their course. You see, on the very first day, teacher must explain the relevance or the importance of that particular subject which he or she is going to teach to a particular group of students. So what is the relevance of that particular, you see, subject? Okay, so give an overview. Then again, while delivering a topic to the student, the teacher needs to, you see, explain the learning outcomes, that is what the student will be able to do at the end of a unit of instruction. That will motivate them. Okay, individuals are motivated by different forces, but some essential influences on student motivation are course design that addresses the needs and expectation of students, teaching that inspires and rewards commitment and restates the purpose of study, or recognizing student individuality and diversity. Opportunities must be given to the student to work in team, and the teacher has to provide effective feedback, instant feedback, immediate feedback, constructive feedback to the students. And the teacher has to be, you see, an active, you see, learner, rather than, because teacher has to act as a learner also in the classroom. Okay, so he cannot say that I will teach this. He should say that today in this session we will learn, because students are also contributing to what the teacher is, you see, delivering. Now let us have a look at two types of learning. One is the surface learning, and the second is the deep learning. Because of individual differences, students react differently to any given learning experience. Some will stand back and attempt to uncritically rote learn what is presented by the teacher. So this is, you can say, reception learning. The teacher is pouring the information into the minds of the student, and students are not allowed to react to what the teacher has delivered to them. So they sit as passive listener. No independent task is, you see, involved in the surface kind of learning, and this promotes only rote memorization. Whereas the deep learning is nothing but meaningful learning. That is when the teacher relates the content with examples from their daily life or example from the word of work that will help them to, you see, promote meaningfulness. So other students may look for the deeper meaning of the interaction and see how it fits with what they know. So they will challenge what is presented critically and ask questions. This is deep learning. And friends, brain research has confirmed that the students, no two students are alike, no two learners learn in the same way. An enriched environment for one may not be for another. In the classroom, we should teach learners to think for themselves. Now the question is differentiate. Differentiated instruction. Teaching philosophy, which is based on the premise that teachers should adapt instruction to student differences. So there should be one-to-one, you see, correspondence between the teaching style and the learning style of the students. So teachers should modify their instruction to meet students' varying readiness levels, their learning preferences and interest. Now the question is, what is differentiating instruction and what is not differentiating instruction? Differentiating instruction is not individualizing instruction for each student. That is that you are not supposed to provide instruction on one-to-one basis. Okay, differentiating instruction is providing instruction to meet the different needs of the learners in the lesson. Okay, differentiating instruction is not assigning, you see, all students the same activities all of the time, because there are gifted students in the classroom, there are average students, there are below average student. So assigning a simple task to below average student will inspire him or her, because once that below average student experiences the success in the simple task, he would like to repeat that task, or perhaps he or she would like to go for a little bit challenging task next time. So differentiating instruction is using varied strategies that addresses students' readiness, their interest, and their learning styles. Differentiating instruction is not using the same instructional material for all students. Okay, it means you have to employ various approaches. You have to provide varied learning experiences. You see, some students learn best when something is simply told to them. Some students learn best when something is shown to them. Some students learn best when they are engaged in, you see, classroom activity, like the flipped classroom. Okay, so differentiating instruction is using varied resources for varied learners. So you see, in today's context, you find a number of videos available on YouTube. As a teacher, please go through the videos available on YouTube, identify those videos, note the link, provide the link to the students, and they can watch during classroom lecture. Because if a teacher is teaching only by employing chalk and talk, student says, sir, we will forget. And if the teacher is integrating media or showing visuals, they say, sir, we may remember. And there is another expectation from student side. They say, sir, if you involve us, we will be always with you. So teacher has to develop the lecture with the participation of the students. Okay, so differentiating instruction is not teaching from the text, that is verbatim, cover to cover, from one page to. Our purpose is not to pour the information into the mind. Our purpose is to make the message clear. So differentiating instruction is using the text as a resource while teaching big ideas or critical concept. That is, the teacher has to relate the content with examples. He has to integrate certain, you see, media, maybe the video, maybe the pictures, diagrams, illustrations, and so on. Differentiating instruction is not assessing all students learning in the same way. During my inaugural address, I told you that there are different techniques of evaluation, and each technique of evaluation has its own advantages and disadvantages. Each technique, you see, only one technique cannot assess students' varied learning abilities. So as a teacher, you need to employ various techniques of evaluation for measuring students' varied learning abilities. So differentiating instruction is using various means of assessing student performance. Differentiating instruction is not limiting learning experiences to the only classroom environment. Okay, so it means promoting learning across varied settings: home, institution, community. What the teacher has to do? He has to identify the examples, or you can say illustrations. Okay, he has to provide he has to provide certain, you see, examples from the word of work. Also, he has to relate. So the friends, if the students, you see, cannot learn the way we teach, it means we should teach them the way the students learn. It's very important. Okay, so now let us have a look at the meaning of the term learning. Now, so far we have studied that there are wide individual differences. There is a, you see, that diversity that has become the norm among the students in the classroom of today. So now let us learn the concept of learning, the characteristics, the elements involved in the learning event, and the process of learning. Okay, so learning, if I asked you what is the or if I ask you why do you teach, definitely your answer is that to impart knowledge or to impart skill, or you see passing on some experience, or pass on the knowledge. Okay, or facilitate learning on the part of learner. So teacher, you see, is not the transmitter of knowledge. He has to provide facilitation as far as learning is concerned. Okay, so you see, if I ask you what is learning, one response could be that if the student has acquired knowledge, skill, and attitude, it means he has learned. It means learning is behavior change. Okay, but you see, if you have acquired knowledge, skills, and attitude, and if you forget immediately, we cannot say learning has taken place. So learning is a relatively, I would say, permanent change in behavior. Okay, if you forget something, there is no learning. So it is relatively permanent change in behavior. And another important component is that learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of interaction with the environment. So interaction with the environment is a prerequisite to any kind of learning. For example, if someone is confined to a situation where there is no environment, do we say learning would take place? No. So learning is a relatively permanent change in the ability to exhibit a desired behavior, and this change occurs as a result of, you see, the successful or you see unsuccessful experience. Gagne has given a very beautiful definition of the term learning. He says a change in human disposition or capability which persists over a period of time. That is really permanent change in behavior, and which is not simply, you see, ascribable to the process of growth. Okay, learning is a process of acquiring knowledge, skills, and attitude because of interaction with the environment. So on the basis of these definition, we can draw the characteristics of learning, that learning is a dynamic process. It is an active process. It is not the final, you see, product. Okay, so it involves, you see, those experiences and training which produce changes, which produce change in his behavior. And friends, you know that learning is purposeful, learning is goal oriented, and learning, you see, prepares the individual for any adjustment or adaptation that may be necessary. And it is a continuous process. It is a universal process because it is not confined to a particular segment of the society. It is universal, and you see, it is continuous. So without learning, the wise becomes foolish, and by learning, the foolish becomes wise, isn't it? So we have to learn, and we have to, you see, continuously learn. Now, what are the elements of the learning event? And if you will see that there is no mention of the teacher. The elements, the first element is the learner. So you see, it is the learner uh, who interprets the stimulus, differentiates it, combines it, and gives some meaning. Okay, so learner plays a very important role in the learning event. The second one is the stimulus. So any stimulus or set of stimuli to which the learner is sensitive can become a part of the learning situation. So the sensorium of touch, taste, sight, hearing, smell, kinesthesis, in its complexities, interrelated patterns receive the primary stimulus from the world outside. And friends, more learning is likely to take place if the learning situation is rich in potential stimulation. So when you are delivering, you see any kind of input, you need to relate with examples, you need to integrate media. Purpose is to provide potential stimulation, that is the to gain the attention of the student or to sustain the attention of the student. Then again, related with the learner, the internal conditions, like how he or she is perceiving, what the cognitive structure, what is the cognitive structure of the student, what self-concept he has got, what is his or her attitude, needs, motives, goals, intelligence, previous learning, okay, recall of prerequisites. All these affect learning. When I say recall of prerequisites, you see, when you are delivering new topic, you want to know whether your students are ready to receive. For this, you have already assumed that my students are familiar with this. So it means there are certain prerequisites. So before coming to the topic, you need to first of all ensure that the requisite prerequisites, you can say, are possessed by the students. So you ask one or two questions. Okay. And fourth component is the response, that is any action or reaction to a situation constitute response variables, or you see overt behavior. So these are the four elements of the learning event: learner, stimulus, internal condition, okay, response. Now coming to the stages of learning, or in fact the process of learning. You see, learning starts with the presentation of a stimulus or stimuli, okay, and for the perception of the stimulus, when I bola stimulus, what is stimulus? Stimulus could be any object, any person, any event that leads to a response. And what is a response? It is a unit of behavior that follows the particular stimulus. And the third component attached to it is reinforcement. Reinforcement is a consequence of the response. So if a particular stimulus response pair is accompanied by a desirable consequence, then it will be more likely that the stimulus involved will prompt the same response in future. So all the stimulus response and reinforcement, these are included in the process of learning. So learning begins with the presentation of a stimulus. Okay, for the perception of the stimulus, it is necessary that the learner has to be motivated. Now many a times we have noticed that the teacher, when enters the class, he says, today I will teach, today I will discuss, today I am going to talk to you about this thing. Now the reaction of the students would be, sir, this is your headache, please go and break your head. Now your students want to know why they are sitting in the classroom. So the why part must be communicated in the beginning to motivate them. For example, I have to teach a topic on inertia, say to a student of class 5, because I am not giving example from your basic discipline, because you belong to different disciplines. So मैं general science का एक example लेता हूँ. Now how to proceed? I want to know whether the students know about the concept of rest, concept of motion, and concept of force as prerequisites to inertia. I'll place one object on the table and ask my students, what is the position of this object? Is it at rest or is it moving? Definitely you will get a response, sir, this is at rest. On switching on the fan, another question, what is the position of this fan? They say, sir, this is in motion. Now this object is at rest. How we can put into motion? They will say by pushing or by pulling, that is by applying some force, this object can be put into motion. Wonderful. Now suppose you are sitting in a moving bus and the driver suddenly applies brakes. What happens? Because they have already experienced, they say, sir, we go forward. And what happens when the driver suddenly starts the bus? They say, sir, we go backward. Why are these due to? Now students are quite curious. They are excited. They are motivated to know why. Then you say, these are due to laws of inertia. So today in this session, we will learn laws of inertia. Then you go to board and write in the middle laws of inertia. And on the left hand side of the chalkboard, you give an overview of your lecture, that is the inertia of rest, inertia of motion, inertia of direction, and the examples. So I say that for the perception of the stimulus, it is necessary that the learner has to be motivated, because this will help him to pay attention to the particular stimulus. And once the learner is able to pay attention or concentrate on the stimulus, it may be possible for him to associate the stimulus with the cognitive structure which is available to him. उसके माइंड में लॉन्ग टर्म मेमोरी में कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन पड़ी है. So association of the new stimulus with the already existing cognitive structure in the individual is essential for attaching some meaning, and this process is called as perception. And any information perceived by the individual has to be retained for a longer period of time if it has to be used for solving a problem in a new situation, and this is called as transfer of learning. And this becomes possible only when the individual is able to recognize or retrieve the relevant information from his memory storage, which is called as, you see, retrieval. So this is the process of learning. Now you see, have a look at the types of learning. Okay, you see that there are you see different learning, you see, may be classified into a number of you see categories depending upon the domain or specific area of the behavior in which changes are introduced, or in terms of methods or techniques that are employed for the introduction of behavioral changes. Now on the basis of, you see, the domain or specific area of the behavior, learning can be classified as verbal learning, motor skill learning, affective learning, that is attitudinal learning, and knowledge learning, that is cognitive learning. That is knowledge, skill, and attitude. And in terms of the methods or techniques employed for the introduction of behavioral changes, learning can be characterized as trial and error learning, classical conditioning learning, operant conditioning learning, that is stimulus is given, stimulus is presented, the student gives reaction, and if the reaction is accompanied by satisfaction, then that will reinforce. So operant conditioning, chain learning, shaping, learning through generalization, learning through discrimination, serial learning, associate learning, insight learning, and there are a variety of learning. So Gagne has you see classified learning into 5 types. Firstly, it is the intellectual skills. Earlier, we used to call it as procedural skills. Okay, so these include concepts, rules, procedures. Rules and concepts are typically derived from the simpler rules and concepts. Okay, so intellectual skills, you see, are involved in the application of real world scenarios, and these are knowing how to do something. Okay, then the verbal information, it is an organized body of knowledge that we require. So verbal information, or you can say declarative knowledge, it is seen when the learner is able to declare or state when he or she has learned. So declarative knowledge is made up of organized and meaningful categories that can be recalled in a different ways by the learner. The third one is the cognitive strategies, as enabling learners to exercise some degree of control over the processes involved in attending, perceiving, encoding, remembering, thinking, and so on. Okay, and the fourth one is the motor skill learning. This involves seeing how the learner is able to carry out steps of a motor performance. For example, preparation of carbon dioxide gas. Okay, setting up a lathe. So motor skills require hand and head coordination. Okay, and the last one is the attitude. These are, you see, inferred internal states that cannot be observed directly and sometimes described as having emotional and cognitive components. You see, attitude do influence behavior. So it is the attitude or the bias that affects the learner's action towards something or someone. So these five learning outcomes, each requiring a different type of instructional method, can be a useful guide for the teacher. And teacher can creatively incorporate these learning outcomes in their problem solving strategies that engage higher levels of learning. So varying the conditions of five types of learning can increase learning outcomes. Now, coming to the two approaches to learning, this is one is the reception learning, whether it is rote or meaningful learning. Now, in the reception learning, the entire content of what is to be taught to the student is given in the present final form. That is, the teacher delivers the instruction using chalk and talk. That is traditional method, and this learning doesn't involve any independent discovery on the part of the individual. Students are simply required to internalize or incorporate the material which is presented to him or her. Okay, now reception learning can be rote memorization, it can be meaningful learning. Meaningfulness will you see happen only once the teacher is associating the content with various examples, maybe from the daily life of the students, or maybe from the word of work. Otherwise it leads to only rote memorization. The second one is the discovery learning, wherein the main content of what is to be learned is not given. The students are provided with the you see number of examples. They are asked to observe those example, and then they are asked to make some generalization. Okay, or say when the teacher provides different types of you see acids, bases, different types of litmus paper, then ultimately after you see working on these you see small experiment, they will say that all acids turn blue litmus red, or all bases turn red litmus blue. Okay, and so on. Likewise, say I have given the students various types of magnets, iron sand mixture, and they will conclude that repulsion is the sure test of magnitude. That is, discovery comes from them only. Okay, so that makes learning very meaningful. Now let us have a look at the, you see, some of the uh, characteristics of adult learners and youth learners. So up to 10th class or +2 class, we say the learners are youth, and once they join the polytechnic or the university or the degree engineering program, they we say they are adult. Now, what are the characteristics? So adult learners are, you see, more problem centered, whereas youth learners are subject oriented. Adult learners are result oriented and drop out if education does not lead to those results, whereas youth learners are future oriented. Youth education is often mandatory. Okay. Adult learners are self directed, that is, they are not dependent upon others for direction. So it means some independent tasks need to be given to the students. You cannot employ spoon feeding kind of delivering instruction, uh, because youth learners often depend on adults for direction. So the teacher has to provide step by step, you see, content matter. Adult learners are often skeptical. Skeptical means that they are inclined to, you see, question the truth or soundness of accepted idea or facts, because they prefer to try it out before, you see, finally accepting it, whereas youth learners are likely to, you see, accept new information without trying it out. Adult learners seek education that relates or applies directly to their perceived needs, that is timely. Adult learners accept responsibility for their own learning, whereas youth learners depend on others to design their learning. So, if this is the case, then let us link the adult learner characteristics with the corresponding teaching strategies for enhancing more learning on the part of the learners. You see, adults have years of experience and a wealth of knowledge. You cannot treat them as, you see, student. You can treat them as resources for yourself and for others students. So here lies the importance of, you see, blended mode of learning or flipped classroom. Okay, so use blended mode. You cannot do spoon feeding kind of so use open-ended question rather than asking the closed-ended questions. So give more opportunities to the students to interact with other students. Secondly, adults have established values, beliefs, and opinion. Then the teacher has to take some time to clarify student expectation of the course, permit debate and challenge of ideas. Be careful to protect minority opinions within the class. Another is that adults expect to be treated as adults. So treat questions and comments with respect. Say, you cannot say roll number 77, you tell me. You build up a system, put in effort, and to remember the names of your students and call them by their names, because a person's name is to him or her the most important and most sweetest sound. So say some student has answered the question very correctly, and you say, Risha ji, you have said very rightly, you are wonderful. Okay, so that will motivate the student. Acknowledge their contribution and do not expect student to necessarily agree with your plan. Okay, adults need to feel self-directed, so engage them in designing the learning process. So flipped classroom maybe give use. Flipped classroom is a mode of delivering instruction when the teacher is giving handouts or videos to students to study at home, and when they come to this class, actual problem solving is carried out. So expect students to want control over the learning pace, because you see, you have provided them material. They can study at their own pace at home, and when they come to the class, they will solve the problem. Adults often have a problem-centered approach to learning, so show immediately how new learning can be applied to current problem, and use participatory techniques like case study, problem-solving group, flipped classroom. Adults tend to be less interested in survey types of courses, and more interested in straightforward how to. So focus on theories and concepts within the context of their application. That is, after discussing the theory, relate, give their implications. So orient the course content toward direct application rather than only toward theory. Adults have increased variation in learning styles. There are because of individual differences. So use a variety of teaching material or method to take into account the differences in their learning style, thinking style, time, type, space of learning. So the idea is to use blended mode of learning. And today in the afternoon, Mrs. Amandeep Kaur will be interacting with you on the concept of blended learning and the advantages over traditional method of teaching. So the key characteristics of a differentiated classroom is that it is student-centered. That is, by shifting the emphasis from the teacher and instruction to the student and learning, focus means redefining the role of teacher. So teacher-centered is more appropriate when learners are less mature and lack prerequisite, maybe at the junior classes. Learner-centered works best when learners are relatively mature and possess significant knowledge, or where there is no particular sequencing of material to be learned. So the key to differentiated classroom is that all students are regularly offered choices. So curriculum should be differentiated in terms of content, that is multiple options for taking in information, the process, that is multiple options for making sense of the ideas, and product means multiple options for expressing what they know. That is, maybe assignment can be given, maybe some questions can be asked, maybe some quiz is given, maybe some project can be given. Okay, so multiple options for expressing what they know. So teacher can differentiate the content, process, and student, and according to students, the three things are very important: the readiness of students toward learning a new topic. The interest of the student is to be maintained by linking the content with examples, with a lot of illustrations. Okay, and the teacher has to recognize the varied, you can say, learners' needs, and he or she needs to understand their needs and accordingly make a plan for providing appropriate learning experiences to enhance learning on the part of learners. Okay. Likewise, there are different thinking styles of the learner. So reflective thinkers, you see, view new information subjectively, relate new information to past experiences. They often say, ask why, examine their feelings. Creative thinkers likely to play with new information, and they always ask why. Okay. Practical thinkers want factual information without any nice to know additions, and they are not satisfied until they know how to apply their new skills to their job. And conceptual skills, conceptual thinkers, they accept new information only after seeing the big picture. So that is, they want to know how things work, not just the final outcome. They learn the concepts that are presented, but also want to know the related concept that may not have been included. Now coming to the learning styles, there are visual learners in the classroom who can process new information when best when it is visually illustrated or demonstrated. So use enough graphics, illustrations, images, demonstration, or you see the PPT, video, and so on. There are auditory learners who process new information best through listening. So a lot of discussion can be carried out. You can ask your students to respond to certain questions. Okay, because students benefit from reading text, small students, I would say. And kinesthetic learners process new information best when manipulation is involved. That is through moving, doing, touching, actively exploring the physical world. So written assignments can be given, ask them to take notes and ask them to examine some object. So they must be involved actively while developing the lecture. And there are environmental learners who process new information best when it is presented in surroundings, okay, that match learners needs. Okay, so let me now go to the another then one this one, index of learning style. Friends, after my session is over, this particular uh, learning style index inventory is available online. This is developed by Felder and Solomon. This index of learning style contains 44 statements, and you have to respond to all these 44 statements. This is free of cost. Once you respond to each of the 44 statements honestly, that will give you your actual learning style. Okay, so this is developed by Felder and Solomon. Please note it down, and you can administer on yourself, and this can be administered to the students also, because only then you will be able to find out the various learning styles. And if there is a proper match between the learning style of the learner and the teaching style of the teacher, then maximum learning would take place on the part of learners. And if the learner is of particular learning style and the teacher is not teaching in that way, then how that learner can help himself? So if you administer on yourself, you will get to know your own learning style and how you can help yourself. The information is also given to you. So this is one dimension of learning style, that is active learners or reflective learners. So you see, active learners, they tend to, you see, retain and understand information best by doing something active with it, discussing or applying it or explaining it to others. Whereas reflective learners prefer to think about it quietly first. And let us try it out and see how it works is an active learner's characteristics, whereas let us think it through first is the reflective learner's response. Active learners, they tend to like group work, whereas reflective learners, they prefer working alone. So sitting through lectures without getting to do anything physical but take notes is hard for is difficult for both learning types. Now, how can active learners help himself? If you are an active learner in a class that allows little or no class time for discussion, now you should try to compensate for these lacks when you study. How you can do it? You can study in a group. You can work with others to guess what you will be asked on the next test. You will always retain information better if you find ways to do something with it. Okay, or what you can do is, you can, after you see receiving the instruction from the teacher, have a piece of paper, write down on that paper what was covered in the lecture. Okay, how can reflective learners help himself? If you are a reflective learner in a class and the teacher doesn't allow some time for thinking about new information, then how you can compensate for this lag when you study? So do not simply read or memorize the material. Stop periodically to review what you have read. You might find it helpful to write short summaries of readings or class notes in your own, you see, words. You see, doing so may take some extra time, but will help you to retain the material for a longer period of time. Now, there are sensing learners and intuitive learners. Sensing learners tend to like learning facts, whereas intuitive learners prefer discovering possibilities and relationships. Sensing learners like solving problems by well-established methods and dislike complications, whereas intuitive learners like innovation and dislike repetition. sensing learners are more practical and careful, whereas the intuitive learners are better at grasping new concepts and are more comfortable with abstractions and mathematical formulations. Sensing learners don't like courses that have no connection to the real life world, whereas intuitive learners do not like plug and chug courses. You see, plug and chug. What do you mean by plug and chug? You see, anything wrote and extremely, you see, reflective, which does not require any thinking. Let me give you examples. For example, in mathematics, inserting one variable x, I will say the plug, into an equation and get a result y, the chug. This is routine kind of. Putting one value and obtaining the other value, that is plug and chug. So they don't like this kind of courses. Now, how can sensing learners help themselves? You see, sensors remember and understand information best if they can see how it links with the real life world. And if you are in a class where most of the material the teacher has presented is abstract and theoretical, so you will have some difficulty. So in that case, you can request your teacher for providing specific examples of concepts and procedures. And if the teacher doesn't provide enough specifics, so as a student, you can try to find some in your course textbook or other references, or you can do some kind of brainstorming with your classmates. How can intuitive learners help themselves? You see, many lecture classes are aimed at intuitors. However, if you happen to be in a class that deals primarily with the memorization or rote substitution in formulas, then you may have some trouble with boredom. So what you can do is ask your teacher for interpretation or theories that link the facts, or try to find the connections yourself. You may also be prone to careless mistakes on tests because you are impatient with details. So take time to read the entire question before you start answering, and be sure to check your results. Visual learners and verbal learners. Visual learners remember best when they see pictures, diagrams, flowcharts, timelines, films, and demonstration. Verbal learners, you see, get more out of the words, written and spoken explanation. And as you know that every learner learn best when information is presented both, you see, visually as well as verbally. How can visual learner help himself? As a visual learner, try to find diagrams, sketches, flow charts, or other visuals. Ask your teacher, or you can consult reference books and go to Google and see if any video display of the course material is available, or you can yourself prepare a concept map by listing key points. That is, write the topic in the middle, and then you see, list the main key points and then the subordinate key points. Let me give you the example. Say topic is concept map. Now, after reading from the textbook, you can develop this concept map. Concept maps are visual diagrams or models. These are used for assessment and organization. These promote reflection and learning. These represent knowledge or understanding which has structure, which has hierarchy, and it is constructed with prior knowledge and new information. Now you see, if you develop this kind of concept map as a learner, it will be very helpful for you to write the sentences yourself. And this kind of concept map you can carry while delivering instruction to the student in the classroom, because through concept map you can develop your lecture. So in that way you will be able to maintain an eye contact with your students in the classroom. Okay, so concept map. This, another example is given. So how can verbal learners help themselves? By writing summaries or outlines of course material in your own words, or working in groups can be particularly effective. Another dimension is sequential learner or the global learners. Okay, most courses are taught in a sequential manner, step by step. But if the teacher, jumps around from topic to topic or skips some steps, you may have difficulty following and remembering. So in that case, you may request your teacher to fill in these skipped steps or fill them in yourself by consulting references. Try to strengthen your global thinking skills by relating each new topic to things you already know. The more you can do so, the deeper your understanding of the topic is likely to be. And how can global learners help themselves? As a global learner, you need the big picture first. So what you can do is you can read the whole chapter in one go, close the chapter, write down on a piece of paper the main points which were included in the chapter. Again, open the book, then write down the other points. Again, open the book and see which points you could correctly write down or which points you have missed out. Okay, so skimming through the entire chapter to get an overview. So doing so may be time consuming initially, but it may save you from going over and over individual parts later. Okay, so please administer this test on yourself, and you will find your own learning style. And tomorrow in the next class, I'll discuss with you. Now, the teacher has to use various principles of learning to improve his classroom teaching. And these principles have been derived from psychological experimentation and data that they can be applied in any learning system, regardless of the various, variables like age, gender, subject matter, or type of learning. And these principles will help to provide solution for various problems. Okay. Now, first is formulating smart learning outcome. So for every lecture, the teacher has to formulate learning outcomes. Learning outcome is a sentence or statement which describes what the learner will be able to do at the end of a unit of instruction. Okay. So these are, I would say, explicit statements that tell a student precisely what they are to learn, how well, and the condition in which they will be tested. So if you have stated learning outcomes very well, that will help you to define what must be learned by the student, what instruction method media you require to reach that learning outcome, and these will be of assistant to the teacher in planning for assessment procedure. So if you are developing, right kind of question statement which is incongruent with the learning outcome, then that question or item will provide valid and reliable results. So the first principle of learning is that formulating SMART. SMART, S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for attainable, R stands for relevant, T stands for time bound. Specific, that is, every learning outcome must begin with an action verb, because if it is stated with an action verb, then it can be measured. Say I ask, define force, you can measure it very well. Either the student will speak out orally, or he has written on a piece of paper. You can very well assess it. But if the question is like, what is force? Now you are expecting him to write the definition, but you may get different responses in regarding the question, what is force? So that will lower the validity and reliability of the result. learning outcomes can be stated in three domains: the cognitive domain, the affective domain, and the psychomotor domain. Cognitive domain refers to the intellectual outcome, and it has got 6 levels. At the lowest level is remembering, then comes understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and you see creating. We have got affective domain, which is concerned with attitude, interest, values, and so on. Then psychomotor domain is concerned with hand and head coordination. The second one is the principle of carrying out task analysis. So once the learning outcomes are stated in terms of student behavior, the content should be logically structured and sequentially organized. For this, task analysis will help the teacher. It is a process of breaking down the complexity of an activity into easier steps. The steps are then presented to student one by one in the sequence. So this involves both analysis and synthesis. Let me give you an illustration. For example, a topic is, say, engine job of an engine mechanic. This is an example. Now the mechanic has to first tune the carburetor, adjust the tappets, adjust spark plug, changing engine oil, cleaning the spark plug. अब ये मेन है. अब इनके नीचे how to tune the carburetor, how to adjust tappets, how to adjust spark plug, how to change engine oil. Let us take one only. Now for changing engine oil, jacking up the car, placing oil container under sump, removing sump plug, allowing oil to drain away. Then under the jacking up car, you can further break down. You can break down till the task becomes self-sufficient. No more information or no more skills are required. So for jacking up the car, acquiring right kind of jack, positioning the jack, manipulating the jack. So this is nothing but task analysis. So I said that after writing the learning outcome, the content needs to be logically structured and sequentially organized. So teacher should move from simple to complex task or skill, or from general to specific. So according to this principle, the most general or inclusive idea is presented first and then progressively differentiated in terms of details and specificity. Okay. Then comes another principle, is principle of meaningfulness. You see, a student is likely to be motivated to learn things that are, of course, meaningful to him. So a course or a topic may be considered meaningful to the extent that each student is able to relate the learning outcome and the method to his own past experiences, his future goals, and his interests. So try to explain the students how the content relates to their experiences. Okay, then it becomes meaningful. Then prerequisites. A student is more likely to learn something new if he or she has all the prerequisites. So a student's past learning is probably the most important factor that determines his or her success or failure in learning. For example, a student who has to learn, simple example ले रहा हूँ, who has to learn, you see, a student who has already learned how to add, how to subtract, how to multiply whole numbers. It means he has all the prerequisites for learning to divide, and is more likely to learn division than a student who has not learned addition, subtraction, and multiplication as prerequisite skills. Then novelty. A student is more likely to learn if his attention is attracted by relatively novel presentations. Okay. So never use only chalk and talk. Give number of illustrations, examples, bring PPT, एंड पीपीटी में भी आप ज्यादा कंटेंट नहीं लिखेंगे, मेन पॉइंट, एंड द मेन पॉइंट हैज टू बी डिस्कस्ड लाइक आई एम डिस्कसिंग. You can integrate some video, okay, or you can you see ask the student to draw something on their piece of paper, maybe the circle diagram. So novelty. Another is open communication. The student is more likely to learn effectively if the presentation is structured, so that the teacher's message is open to the students, I would say, inspection. So encourage students to ask question. You yourself ask question. Respond to students' answer. Create a non-threatening kind of environment, anxiety-free environment in the classroom. Because students in anxiety-free environment become more task-oriented, because they are more confident. Okay, so open communication is very important. Another is questioning. You need to insert few questions, or you need to invite few questions. Now, say how to ask question is a skill. Ask question, pause for a time, for a few seconds, let the students raise their hands, then name a particular student to answer the question, and then after listening to the answer, you give immediate feedback. Now, say sometimes you can do another technique. Say one student has not raised his hand, you can ask him to answer question. Now he seems to be hesitating. So what you can do is you can break down that question into 2-3 small questions. The idea is to give him or her some hint. So once he answers a simple question, he would like to raise his hand in future. Probably he would like to answer the difficult question also. So questioning. Then motivation, very important factor in learning. And you know that there are two types of motivation. One is extrinsic motivation, another is intrinsic motivation. Actually, motivation is concerned with why of behavior, the reason behind people putting in effort. Motivation refers to motives in action. And what is motive? Something that makes a person act in a particular way. So you need to understand the needs of the students and then reinforce their behavior accordingly, because what acts as a reinforcer for one may not be for another. So you need to individualize reinforcers and try to involve their participation. You see, immediate feedback. So in order to learn effectively, the learner needs to know if he or she has been successful. See, the more the learner knows about what he is doing, the more rapidly he is able to make improvement in his or her performance. So provide constructive feedback, because students want to know immediate knowledge of their result. Likewise, assignments need to be returned to the students with conscientious remarks within 2 or 3 days. Okay, and not remarks like requires improvement or strengthen it more. No, you have to highlight the gaps, and then you can ask him to strengthen the gap. Another is the active appropriate practice. You see, the student is more likely to learn if he takes an active part in practice, which is geared to reach a learning outcome. And learning is effective when students are allowed to manipulate the learning material, respond to it, and relate one part to another. So likewise, distributed practice. A student is more likely to learn if his practice is scheduled in short periods distributed over time. Okay, this can be another effective, you can say, principle of learning. Then objective evaluation. That is, there should not be any ambiguity in this statement. If I ask, what are Newton's laws of motion? Now, this is highly subjective question. Every student will interpret this question differently. One student will write the laws of the statement of the three laws. Another student will try to explain each of the law with one example. Another student will try to give two example. So can't the statement be rewritten as describe each of the three laws of motion, three Newton laws of motion with one example. Describe each of the three Newton's laws of motion with one example. You have asked him, explain the working principle of, say, carburetor of an IC engine. One student has explained it. Another student has prepared a sketch also. Obviously, you will give full marks to the student who has prepared the sketch. तो क्वेश्चन की स्टेटमेंट में क्यों नहीं लिख देते एक्सप्लेन विद ए नीट स्केच द वर्किंग प्रिंसिपल ऑफ कार्बोरेटर ऑफ एन आईसी इंजन. Don't ask question like write a short note on semiconductor, write a short note. You see, in such questions, the students do not know where to start, where to end, and what to put. Student is totally confused. It means he is supposed to write the whole chapter. No, so this is not objective evaluation. So this is only subjective evaluation. And providing for stimulus variation. So use of variety of method, media, material, verbal, non-verbal skill for achieving learning outcome. Provide an opportunity to the learner to engage in a variety of activities and thus helps in maintaining their attention to the learning task. So you need not stand stationary at the lecture stand. Bring purposeful movements. Supplement with your gestures, not by closing your hands or by putting your hands in the pockets of your trouser. No. So you show gestures. Okay, vary the tone and pitch of your voice. These are due to laws of inertia. So vary the tone, okay, pitch. And also you can sometimes increase the rate of delivery, sometimes you can decrease the rate of delivery, sometimes you can ask question, now they will participate. Or you have spoken something, you go to chalkboard, write main point, now they will see to it, or you show some PPT. So oral visual switching, change in interaction pattern, and maintain an eye contact with each and every student sitting in the classroom. Because मैंने कई बार notice किया है, when teacher is delivering, he is giving attention only to the students who are sitting in the front row, and the backbenchers are ignored totally. So they will tolerate for some time. After that, they may indulge in some other activity. So providing for stimulus variation and catering to the individual differences. And this particular session was on the understanding learners and their needs. So now you see, I will stop here, and I now session is open for any kind of question. You are welcome. Backbenchers, they create a problem. Why? Because we are not giving our attention. So don't stand stationary at lecture stand. Please move to left, stay for a few seconds, then move to right, and then go in between also if there is a passage. So you have to maintain an eye contact with each and every student sitting in the classroom. So any question, if you have got, you are welcome.